So we're moving into the next step, which is transcoding the footage from set and creating proxy files for editorial. The key to this whole process with the footage that we're going to be capturing this year is organisation. You'll find yourself doing a lot of copying, a lot of transcoding, and a lot of looking at blue bars. And because of this, you can find that you are, it takes you a long time to get into editorial. So my advice is to be organised and get transcoding as soon as you can. So let's just have a look at a little bit of project organisation first. So this is my enclosing folder, BA3 workflow exercise, and you can see the folders that have been set up. If you go to BA3 post resources, you can copy and paste this into your own edit share space. But we've got a folder for delivery, graphics, interchange files. There are things like XMLs and AAFs, production documents, continuity notes, script, folder for proxies, all your picture and sound design. This folder's just for these videos I'm creating now, and you've got a folder for the cuts that you're going to produce for the various screenings you'll have. So if I go into Russia's picture sound, you can see I've got day one here, and I've got day one, card one. So this naming convention I'll follow this all the way through. So day one, card one in Resolve, there'll be a folder called day one, card one. I'll be producing a timeline called day one, card one, exporting the proxies to another folder called day one, card one, and then when you go into Avid or Premiere, you'll have a bin, day one, card one. And this is what we have. Now these rushes are shot on the Sony using the OCN codec, which is a form of RAW. What I suggest, if any of you are shooting RAW, that we should have a meeting to just go through the RAW settings for your particular film. So here are my rushes, and this is my project organisation. Now if I go to Resolve, I've got my project here, and we'll just go through some of the setup for the project. So go to my settings. At this point, why are we using Resolve? You can actually use a proxy workflow in Premiere. You can now use Adobe Media Encoder. You can even do this within Avid itself. But there are a couple of advantages to using Resolve, or maybe three. Number one is probably, I would say it's more commonly used professionally. So that's a big reason for it. Number two, once you set up this Resolve project, this is the Resolve project you take right through to the color grade. So when you come back off and you've locked your cut, when you bring that sequence into this Resolve project, all the rushes are there. You'll need to relink them, but they'll be there. So at this point, I would recommend just a standard 1920 1080 timeline, simply because you're just going to be creating proxies for editorial. When it comes to the color grade, you can change that to CinemaScope if you wish to. It means that in editing, you can reposition the shots and put your own black bars top and bottom if you are CinemaScope. I've saved this project already, so before I go too much further, I'm going to go to the preferences, user preferences, save and load, and I'm just going to enable project backups, which I've done. So these have been backed up to my own computer. But in reality, you'd probably want those to be on a separate drive. So we've got that. We don't need to change anything here. So save out of that, and back to settings again. This is an important setting we've got here. Almost as important as these cache files locations. So in this particular case, I'm going to save these to my hard drive. So this is going to be saved with the project, so this will be your solid state drive which we're going to supply to you. And we'll go also to general options, and this is super important, okay? This is the conform options, and you want assist real names from either the embedded source clip information or the source clip file name. And I'll explain why very soon. So at the moment I'll leave that off so I can demo what it does a bit later. Right, so we are good to go. Go to the media page, go to my rushes, which are in, I should know this, there we go. Picture rushes sound, picture rushes day one card one, here are my rushes, and I'm going to select those all. Before that, just make a new bin. Day one card one. Select the rushes here and just drop them into Resolve. Asking me if I want to make the project the same frame rate as the clips. I certainly do, so drop that in and we're ready to go. Now, as I said before, these are a form of RAW, and you may want to change your RAW settings, you will do, but for the sake of this, you just come and see me. And you can see at the moment these columns being populated, and there's all kinds of information in here, and what we'll be doing is creating a file which will transfer this information to the editor of your choice, Avid or Premiere. Now, if you see here under real name, there's nothing in here. This real name column is really, really important for keeping track of footage throughout the editing and color grading. So this is where I'm going to go back here into settings, general options, and I'm going to assist real names from the source clip file name. And can you see in the real name here, we've got this information, which is essentially just the file name without the extension. And that's really important, especially in Avid. It's just worth taking a moment just to check that your footage is fitting in the screen correctly. So our footage is 4K, 4096 over 2160. We've got a HD project, 1920 over 1080, and you can see we've got black bars top and bottom here. This is what we're looking for, but how this works depends in your settings and how your image scaling. So I've scaled the entire image to fit, because we want, in editorial, we want to be able to see the entire image. When we come to the color grade itself, we'll be changing this, and I'll cover that when we come to the color grading part of these videos. But at the moment it's correct. Okay, we've got our footage in, and we've got it's fitting in correctly in the HD project. I'm not going to transcode all this footage for this exercise. I'm just going to take these 3 clips here, right click, create a new timeline using selected clips, day 1 card 1, and create that timeline. And here it is, just here. So if I go to the edit page, we've got our 3 clips here. So it's at this point here that we can now start to think about preparing this footage for editorial. Okay, so color page. Okay, so we have our 3 shots here. In your case, this would be however many cards you have, how many shots you have on a card. This was shot on a Sony camera. So we've got a couple of choices here. Obviously it's shot in log, so we want to de-log it, or in other words, apply a LUT or a colour grade. And you can, this is your choice really. I'm going to use a lookup table. And we've got our lookup table gallery there, and just here we've got our 4 Sony supplied lookup tables. So these are the ones supplied by Sony, where if you apply it, it's going to move this footage into the Rec 709 colour space, and it's going to start looking somewhat recognisably good. The workflow for this is to add a node. So there's my node here. I'm going to put my lookup table in node 2, and there I've got node 1 just in case I need to make any tweaks. So if we're doing any colour grading at all, we're colour grading node 1, and that feeds the lookup table. So if I go to this view, I can hover over the lookup table icon here, and I can see what the lookup table's doing to the material. Okay, they're just various variations on the theme really. I'm just going to use this one here, double click, and this is how my shot is looking. Okay, and it looks very blue, and that's because it is very blue. It's shot in a theatre and it's flooded with blue lights. And look at the scopes here, and you can see them there. So if I disable that lookup table, you can see how it's stretched the contrast there. If you think the lookup table's not doing what you want it to do, this is the point here where you can go in and make some changes. Okay, and those changes should be in node 1 here. So I'm just going to open out the contrast just a little bit more, and maybe pull some of the blues out. Something like that. Okay. So now I've got, we're not doing a colour grade here. What we're doing is just preparing the brushes for editorial. So now I've got this, I'm just going to go to the other 2 clips here, and I'm just going to copy that grade to them. And just have a quick scan, and that's as far as it goes here. I'm just going to scan through the timeline and just double check the footage is fairly consistent, which it is. I'm happy with that. So at this point here, I'm going to take this timeline, take it to the deliver page, and I'm going to export an individual clip for each of these shots. At this point, before we do that, it could be worth thinking about adding timecode overlays. So I'll do that as well. It's up to you. It is the professional thing to do. It is what is expected. But there are various reasons for that. Partly it's to make it really obvious that this is for editorial and not for anything else, and it's to help sound design and even the colour grade locate shots. So I'm just going to add the source file name, not that one, source clip name, and the source timecode. And I'm going to position those a little bit higher, just so if there's any black bars at the top and bottom for the CinemaScope, they're sitting above the CinemaScope. I can also look at making them a little bit less intrusive with the opacity here. Happy with that. So here's my 3 shots, source timecode, source file name, ready to go to the deliver page. So going to the deliver page. We've got video, audio and file tabs. Okay, so start with video and I'm going to browse the location. So I'm going to do both Premiere files and Avid files at the same time. When you come to do it, you'll be doing your whichever editor you're using. So I'm going to browse to the location. Workflow exercise, proxies. I've got Avid and Premiere Pro. I'll do the Avid ones first. Avid, day one, card one. That's my location. Okay, so this is all in the document. Very specific when it comes to exporting. So if you go to the website where this video is, we'll be asking for MXF OP Atom for the format. Codec will be DNX HD. Type will be 36 8-bit. So this is very compact file sizes, good enough for editing. Okay, and we're rendering individual clips. A single clip would be the timeline. With those 3 clips as a single clip, we're just going to have 3 individual clips. Go to the audio tab. We're not interested in audio. You can sync up audio in Resolve. I would recommend you do that in Premiere or Avid. So we don't need that lit up. And file, very important, source name. So this means that the source name of the proxy will have exactly the same name as the source file of the clip, source file name of the clip. And that's it. This is ready. So I'm going to add this to the render queue. If we go up on here, look at the details. 1920 1080 DNX 36 source name. Okay, so I can go now and do the Premiere Pro files. So if I go to video, this time it's QuickTime, ProRes, Proxy. Similar in quality to the Avid codec. Good enough for editing. Audio, no audio, file, source name. And we browse to our proxy folder, go to Premiere Pro, day one, card one, select that, add to render queue. So now I'm ready to send these out. Once you've got this set up, you know, for every card and every day, this is going to become much simpler. Essentially, you're just adding the card, selecting your clips, creating a timeline, doing a really basic color grade for editorial, and when you go to your deliver page, it'll all be set up and you can just add to render queue, and essentially it's a timeline with each card, all with this naming convention. So at this point, I'm going to start render, and I'm going to stop recording and come back to you when it's finished. Right, so now we have completed that render. In this case, Premiere Pro and Avid, but for you guys, it'll just be whichever editor you're using. And if we go to the Finder, you can see I've got my picture with sound and all my camera files there. And then I've got a proxy folder. In my particular case, I've got an Avid. And these are my proxy files. In true Avid style, you can't view these from the Finder. And then I've got a Premiere Pro, day one, card one. And these are my proxies for Premiere. So, we've got one final step to do before we can come out of Resolve. We're going to produce something called an ALE, Avid Log Exchange. So we go to the media page here and look at our rushes. You can see there's all kinds of information here. dates, time codes, resolution, codecs. In addition to that, you can add comments, all kinds of information here. Quite often individual camera manufacturers, when you import the footage, will have add their own columns to this as well. So what we're doing is we're going to export this ALE, and quite often, these columns will be populated with continuity note information, time of day. It's very much an assistant editor's job to do all this sort of thing. And when they've done their work, or the DIT has done their work, we can select the timeline, go to timeline here, right click, go to timelines, go to export ALE. So click that, and it's going to be called day 1, card 1, ALE. There's my proxy folder, and I've got a folder for ALEs, and I'll save that in there. So we have ALE folder, Avid proxy folder, Premiere Pro proxy folder. Save the Resolve projects. Everything is in good shape in terms of naming and conventions, bins with the same name, sequences with the same name, likewise in the Finder and the ALE. So now I can close Resolve in this particular case, and we'll do separate videos for Premiere Pro and Avid, and then after we've completed the edits, we'll go back to Resolve and do videos for that as well. So, see you in the next video.